Content over everything.
It's in Missouri, so weird place. Of course, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, either the District of Columbia or the state. No, you go
we're
to
right in the middle. Everyone has this trouble with that one.
Between the two.
It has. No one knows really why we're called that. I guess
Well,
people
I
like.
seem to recall he was quite highly thought of.
He was very popular, but Missouri
He was in
wasn't
all
a
the
state
papers.
at the time. Yeah, he was all big news.
It's in all the newspapers.
But I always find that's kind of the opposite. I always find that there's a lot of students who are very, very smart and test well and can do the work, but then have very poor interpersonal skills.
Sure, but they're the sort of people who you would put into a PhD program.
Yeah.
They're not particularly sociable or highly socialized, so they don't mind offending people by taking up an unpopular but potentially fruitful avenue of research.
Yeah.
And those are the sort of people who would end up going and doing something, genius.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Rather than being when they increased the federal funding for universities, and the universities spent it all on administrators and staff rather than lecturers.
Yeah.
You go from having like 3 or 4 administrators to 3 or 4 corridors of administrators. Then they have to start looking for something to do.
I know that, 100%. I know that in my university at home, the professors always complain.
Well, Mizzou, just down the way from you.
Yeah.
Losing all of those, letting the students go completely bonkers and scream at the administrators, and then everybody who's all the alumni, they're just going, I don't want to be associated with this.
Yeah.
And anybody who goes there, they have to realize that their degree will be seen as worthless because they went to a worthless institution.
It's interesting. The way it works is I know that all the different departments, all the professors, the people doing research and the people teaching, they all think that the budget for professors is way too small and the budget for administrators is too big.
Yes.
The students all think the same thing, but somehow...
Well, if you ask somebody to sign a loan agreement at the age of 18, and they sign up for $100,000 worth of debt, and they don't understand that they are the customer and that they can make demands on the organization, and because they can take their money elsewhere, they actually have the whip hand.
Yeah.
Possibly a slightly unfortunate choice of words in Missouri, but I digress. And unfortunately, because the whole thing has been a function of the long march through the institutions, and there are practically no, in terms of a diversity of opinion, there is no diversity of opinion. It's all polarized at the very left-hand end. Functionally, it has because you are very porous to ideas when you're an undergraduate, and you've just been institutionalized for the first 18 years of your life at school. I mean, in my own case, I have a niece who is the daughter of my sister, who is a university lecturer. And the reason I initially started following Trump is because I realized how incandescently furious he makes my sister. And if the only thing he does for his entire administration is continue to make my sister confounded and angry, it's been a completely virtuous experience.
I don't know if that works for... I don't know how much that helps me out, but...
No, it doesn't. I'm just saying that my niece, I remember saying to her on her 16th birthday, I will always treat you take you seriously and answer any questions you have. And then she said, all right then, why did Mom unfriend you on Facebook? And I'm thinking, it's a conversation that isn't fit for home, and I don't intend on undermining my sister's right to parent, but shall we just say it was political? So I won't be able to have a sensible conversation with my niece for at least another 4 years because she's a sophomore, and she's getting neo-Marxism forced down her throat, and it's in the very atmosphere of the place. So until she leaves, I won't be able to have a...
Does she go to university here or
No,
in the US? You know where?
I'd rather not say on camera.
Oh, all right.
But
That's fair.
I greatly look forward to the possibility of having a sensible discussion with my niece in 4 years' time.
You hope that universities stay a place where you can go and confront.
It seems as though the number of liberal, not just liberal arts colleges, but liberal institutions of higher learning are closing every year, and it's the conservative ones that are increasing their intake because they're requiring a little bit more academic rigor, and they have a number of different. I have no objection to a Marxist lecturer so long as he's like a the Roman Catholic Society of Jesus, Jesuits. I have no objection to a Jesuit as a lecturer because they're very demanding. They require a very high level of scholarship, and I have no objection to any lecturer so long as they make extreme demands on the students. But if you get like gender studies, and the answer is it's men's fault. 3 words and you get an A.
I've had. I don't know how accurate that is. I used to think that, and my university, you have to take like a breadth of classes.
When they force you to take courses that you have to have in order to get a degree, which are just exclusively ideological.
Well, I've had a generally positive experience in those classes, even where I disagree with the professor. I feel like sometimes my students might not. Might kind of tune off a little bit, but at least my experience has been that my professors have been willing to listen to argument and stuff like that. And as long as my experience has been, at least this is personal, that I've been lucky to have good professors where if my argument is good, my conclusion can be something completely different than what they agree with, and they'll recognize it.
Proceed from your premises.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I challenge them on something, they're genuinely good.
This is why somewhere like going to Berkeley as a conservative makes you a much stronger debater.
Yeah.
And the thing is that liberals don't know what conservatives think, but conservatives know what liberals think.
I don't know if that's always true either.
Well, you're exposed to it the whole time, and you have to argue every single point. So
if you're in university, then I say that's probably true. Yeah.
So I mean, it's like I say, if you modify the intake of a university to be the head girl type, then as that feeds through into the higher levels of this administration of the institution, then it becomes an institution which is like women who were very smart and outward going and what have you, hardworking in their teens and 20s. The organizational psychosis, the organizational sensibility becomes that of a lady in her 50s who was very bright and socialized at age of 20, as opposed to these people who were very, very motivated and a very narrow area of technical expertise.
That's true. I think that's true to an extent, but you get to a point where you need to have that real world experience. You need to have a diversity of you generally want even if you are a humanities person and you study humanities, you probably want that person not to be illiterate when it comes to
of course but
math or science.
The idea of having a liberal arts university and a very strong technical university, and you understand that the culture of each place is going to be very different.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can't allow the culture of a liberal arts university to take over a technical university, otherwise it will become worthless. And it will exclude people who are very academically rigorous but narrow, and not particularly good at communicating, very good at research in their area. So you think if you actually require that they teach an undergraduate course rather than just be a researcher, and they're really not the type, then you have a reason to fire them, and you're basically decapitating the university.
That's true to an extent. I found that
my point being, when you were talking about the institutional style and the soul of the university and the character of the university and any organization, it's so susceptible to very subtle change. People tend to recruit in their own image.
Yeah, that's true. I give you that.
And so if it's I actually fell out with my sister, and this is the point I was trying to get to. I was talking to her about because she is in a social sciences department in a discipline which isn't a mainstream one. So she starts doing a lot of staff stuff and recruiting. And I said, oh, of the last 20 people you recruited, how many of them had a Y chromosome? And she wouldn't answer. And I said, oh, so that's none then, is it? And of course, all of her professional colleagues are listening in. And I said, so basically, the whole idea of diversity, you're actually saying, it's, let's not have any men, but be completely diverse. And she unfriended me.
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, you wouldn't know. Obviously, you're not familiar with the dynamic between me and my sister.
Yeah, I don't know.
Except that I like Trump because he pisses her off. But the thing is, all of her, it would have been professional suicide for her to have conceded the point. But of the last 20 people that she recruited, she didn't recruit any men. Despite there being some quite competent, potential professors.
I think there's arguments going both ways on those issues where.
But when somebody is, they're told to, women and minorities only need apply. It's going to change the profile of the institution.
That's true, but I think the argument for doing it is that historically it's been such a male-centric, non-diverse institution.
The answer to sexism is more sexism.
No, but at some point it's one of those things where.
How about
is it going to fix itself?
We go for meritocracy, and we have the best professor of literature.
So I think the argument against it is, I understand. I understand.
I have 3 postgraduate degrees myself. I'm familiar with all of the one of them is in human resource management. So I have an understanding of the idea of having positive discrimination. But positive discrimination is still discrimination.
So the question is, it's what do you want the ends to look like, and how do you want?
How about a meritocracy?
So if you want to have the best people,
meritocracy is very efficient.
Right. So, but if you want the best people in the best positions all the time, starting now, the argument is that historically and currently there has been a bias in most professions towards white men. And I think
Not in the last 40 years. It's been illegal.
I agree, it's been illegal, but I'd say historically that's true. And second of all, the ends because of that.
It's not like saying there weren't any lawyers in female lawyers in the 19th century, or doctors.
Mm-hmm.
It required a great deal of intellect and scholarship, but it has always required a great deal of intellect and scholarship to become a doctor.
Yes.
In this country, in the last years of the last century, the government insisted that there be 50-50 gender equity on access to medical school. And the problem is, we know that the median retirement date for a female doctor is 35. And the median retirement age for a male doctor is 61. So even if we don't assume that you become any more valuable as a doctor between the age of 31 and 61, you just get more years of service.
I think that the argument that people would make is that if you have an institution that already exhibits inequalities, not that it's not based on merit, but that
the modal retirement age for female doctors, as in the day when the largest number is the day they graduate, because they weren't after an MD, they were after an MRS.
Well,
I
understand. Yeah, I would.
The ultimate arm candy is a female medical student who's graduated.
I know, but
now you know that there are certain tendencies, and that given freedom in no constraint in how you behave, women have certain, like a desire for a work-life balance.
I don't know the psychological and the really.
There is let's say you have Iran and Norway as examples of 2 cultures who have a certain perspective on gender freedom. Can we assume, for the sake of the discussion, that Norway puts a little bit more energy into making sure that people are allowed to do what they want to do?
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah, I would agree. And In Iran, around 56% of undergraduate engineers are female. And it's about 50-50 when it comes to nurses. In Norway, as you begin to remove external pressure from constraining people's choice of what they do, and they end up doing what they want to do, it seems as though 91% of undergraduate nurses in Norway are female, and it's about 87% of male engineers.
I wonder why. Why do you think that's the case? Think it's in.
Well, because people have preferences. And as you remove any external societal expectation or pressure from them to do any particular thing, then they begin to go into the things that they would naturally prefer to go into.
It's interesting. I gotta get going, but that is interesting. I'll think about it. See you.
Well, that go rid of him. So there. Nah, run away.
Don't take over everything from your community.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
Well, it's a medal from the Third Reich, and that was a regime that started the Second World War.
That what?
It was a regime.
Yeah.
So remember to take the tape. We were at war with during the Second World War.
Who are we?
Great Britain, the United States, France. France was invaded, unfortunately.
They fell pretty quickly.
Italy changed sides. I mean, it's a big story.
Italy is on the German side.
Yeah, I know, and then they changed sides.
Yeah, because they were losing.
Well, yeah.
Basically, Italy was pretty effectual in both wars.
Anyway. So